Welcome back to the course on digital logic and computer architecture. So, till now we have seen what are the basic components of a computers, and in last class we have explained how computer works and how we are going to execute a program in a computer. Now today we are going to see some components inside the processor, inside the CPU. These components are registers. Registers are nothing but the storage element inside the processor. So we are going to have some discussion on those particular register, what type of registers that we have and for what purpose we are using those particular registers. So basically, in a nutshell, we say that what are the components of a computer. We know that central processing unit, it consists of control unit and arithmetic and logic unit. So arithmetic and logic unit, ALU, generally constitute of some arithmetic and logic operations, and we are going to perform those arithmetic and logic operations with the help of ALU. And secondly, that control unit is going to have coordination between all the components and going to help us to execute the program step by step. Also, CPU has temporary storage space, and we say these are registers. So today we are going to see what are the different kind of registers we have inside the processors and why we are using it. So in this lecture mainly we are going to look into those particular registers. Data and instruction need to be get into the system and results out. So we have to get the data and instruction to the computer system, and we have to give the result to the user. So for that we need input-output devices. And temporary storage of code and result is needed, and we say these are the main memories because our computer works on von Neumann stored program principle. So we have to store our data and code in some storage space, and we say this is the main memory. And in last class we have seen how we are going to interface the memory with our processor and how processor are going to fetch information from memory. Okay. Now, one of the main unit is connecting. Now we are having several components and we have to connect them together. And what are the different kinds of connection that we have? These are basically memory connection, input-output connection, and CPU connection. And already we have talked about the bus system, and through bus system we are going to connect those particular components. So this is basically memory connection. So what will happen? We are going to receive and send data and receive the address or location. Okay. Because if this is our main memory, then what will happen? And if this is our processor CPU, then what will happen? We are having data bus. Through data bus, we are going to transfer the data. We are having address bus. We are going to provide the address of a memory location that we are going to work with, and we are having control bus through which we are going to get a control signal. So what are the kind of control signals that we are having? One, say, read signal. With the help of read signal, we are going to indicate that we are going to read the information or going to fetch the information from memory. With the help of write signal, we say that we are going to write a new information in the memory, and we have to control the timing issues also. So here just I want to give you an idea about that how we are going to construct it. Say generally you say that you are having a computer which works on say 2.3.2 gigahertz. That means this is the operating frequency of your machine, of your computer. That means every clock pulse we do some little bit of work. And what is the time duration? This is basically depends on the clock frequency. If we are going to work with 3.2 gigahertz, so some nanosecond we are going to give for each and every step. When we talk about this is the operating frequency of my processor, it means that this is the operating processor of this particular CPU. So it works in that particular operating frequency. But in general or in reality, the operating frequency of main memory is far less. if we are going to build a main memory which also works on this particular same clock 3.2 gigahertz, then cost of main memory will increase like anything and it will be beyond affordable limit of a people. We cannot purchase any laptop, we cannot purchase any computer. So that's why we are coming with a slower solution, and for that cost is coming down and which is coming into affordability. So now you just see that we are having two different devices. One is working with 3.2 gigahertz and second one just said that it is around 1 megahertz. Okay, the important clock frequency is 1 megahertz in your main memory. So now somehow we have to synchronize these two devices which works in two different time signals. So for that some kind of timing synchronization signal is required. So these are the some kind of control signal. It will go from the processor to the main memory. Okay. So these are the three types. These are the different signals, control signals that we have. So memory is connected through system bus. So it has data bus, address bus, and control signals or control bus. Similarly, output input devices or input output devices, so they will also be connected. So it is similar to the memory connection, you can see. So when we work for an output devices, then it receives data from the computers and send data to the peripherals. This is my input output module. And in case of input, it receives from peripherals and send it to the computers. So this is output sending from computers to the peripheral devices. In case of input or peripheral devices, we are going to get the input. So this is the input output connection. And now finally we can have this particular scenario. So this is the processor. Already we have seen this particular slide. This is the main memory and IO modules. These three components are connected through this particular system bus. Okay. Now, if you just look into this internal CPU structure, so what will happen here? We are having that internal connection. So this is the internal CPU bus. Through this particular bus, we are going to transfer information from one point to the other point, or one location to the other location of the processor, or we can say that transferring information from source to destination. Will come to this particular point, and we have already discussed or explained why we use this particular bus bar to have a less complex connecting network. And this is the control unit. That control unit will generate some control signals, and those control signals will be given to the appropriate component of this particular processor according to our requirement. So we'll see what type of control signals that we are going to have and how we are going to use it. Okay, so first of all, before going to the register part, we are going to explain something about that arithmetic and logic unit. So today we are going to see inside the processor we are having that registers. These are nothing but the storage unit. We can store our information temporarily. So we are going to see what are the different kind of register we have and for what purpose we are going to use those particular register. And we are having this arithmetic and logic unit. Inside that we are having some operation. We can perform arithmetic and Boolean logic operation over there. We can have a shifter because already we have discussed or we have talked about the shift register. So either we can shift the information towards the left side or shift the information towards the right side. And we have some status flag. This is also when we are going to discuss about a register. We are going to talk about status flag also because it is a kind of registers only where we are going to store some flag information. Okay. Now, first one is we are talking about the ALU, arithmetic and logic unit. Now, you just see what we are going to see. The block diagram of ALU is represented like that. So it is having two inputs, say A and B, and it is having say one output, say C. Okay. Now, if I say that this input size is your 8-bit, then we can give 8-bit of information through A, 8-bit of information through B, and we are going to get result which may be again 8 bits. So basically if I am going to perform say C is equal to say A plus B, then we are going to give input in A, input in B, and after performing the operation we are going to have the output in C. Now if the size of this particular inputs and outputs are 8 bit, generally we say this is your, we are going to perform operation on 8 bit together. So we are going to have 8 bit information in input, and we are going to perform say addition operation on all those 8 bits, and we are going to result as an 8 bit. So we are having inside that ALU we may have another which is of 8 bit size. Now if we say that our processor is a 32 bit processor, then what that is means? It means that we can, our ALU can work with 30 bit of information in one go. That means it can perform operation on 30 bit operations. If I say that my processor is 64 bits processor, then it means that we can work with 64 bit data. That means the size of my adders or subtractor will be 64 bits. So now if we say the size that it is a 32 bit processor, it means that we can work with data of 32 bits in one go. Okay. Now in ALU we can have say several operation. Okay. So currently I am having 4 operations. Say we can perform add, subtract, multiplication, and say division. Similarly, say another operation I can have OR, AND, XOR, and NOT. So now we are having 8 different operations. Out of that, 4 are my arithmetic operation and 4 are in logic operation. So that's why I am saying that it can perform some more arithmetic and logical operation, and it is be there in our arithmetic and logic. So I am giving some input in A and B, and we are going to perform one particular operation. Now how we are going to indicate that particular operation? Okay. So for that, again, it is a very simple things now. We can have a binary encoding, and according to that encoding, we can indicate what operation we are going to perform. So say that for this particular 4 operation, we need 2 bit of information. 2 to the power 2 is equal to 4. So I can say that if the signal is 0, 0, we are going to perform add operation like that 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. Similarly for OR also, I can say that 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and NOT is 1, 1. So in this particular case, all information, all operations are your binary operation, but last operation is your unary operation. So it not basically works on a particular input. So it according to our design, you can identify whether that we are going to perform the NOT operation either on input A or input B. It depends on our design. Now, so this is the way I am going to distinguish your what are the arithmetic operation we are going to perform and what are the logic operation that we are going to perform. But see that 0, 0 and 0, 0, it indicates add as well as OR. So again, to distinguish these two operations, we need one more bit. So I can say that 0 indicate that arithmetic operation and 1 indicate the logic operation. So these are the 3 bits of information that we have. With the help of these 3 bits of information, we can identify operation, and after identifying that particular operation, that ALU is going to carry out that particular operation. Now to keep this particular information, maybe we can have 3 select line. Okay, maybe S0, S1, and S2. So with the help of these 3 select line, now we can identify. So if I give 0, 1, 1 as an input over here, then what will happen? It is going to identify the division operator, and it is going to divide the operation, going to make A minus A divide B. This is the way we can resolve it. So now if we are having more operation in ALU, then we need more number of select line. Now when I am going to perform an operation, say add, how I am going to get this idea? Because we are going to execute an instruction, and that instruction will be in our instruction register, okay, in IR. So we are having that particular instruction or opcode of the instruction in this particular IR. Now depending on the opcode of the IR, we know that we are going to perform this particular operation. When this information will go to the control unit, now control unit is going to generate these three signals S0, S1 and S2 to identify the appropriate operators or appropriate processing element inside this particular area. Okay. So many a time I have mentioned that the responsibility of my control unit is to generate the control signals at appropriate time. So when I am going to perform one particular operation in ALU, according to this particular bit pattern, we have to generate that those particular signals to select the appropriate operation. Okay. Now I think you have no slight idea what are the control signals that needs to be generated by our control unit. So now we have discussed about the adder circuit. We have also seen that adder circuit can be used to do subtraction also if we are representing our numbers in 2's complement form. So like that we are having multiplier circuit, we are having divider circuit like that. So all circuit will be integrated together, and we said that is the ALU, and ALU is a basic component in our processor inside CPU, which with the help of this ALU we are going to perform the operation, some arithmetic operation and some logic operation. Now second component inside the processor is my registers. So these are basically some working space inside the processor, inside the CPU, and we say these are the temporary storage, and we call these are the registers. And the number and function vary between processor design. So number means how many registers we are going to put in a processor, and what are the function of those particular register, what kind of operation that we can perform on the data that we are having on those particular register. So these are the design issues. While we are going to design a processor, we have to freeze those particular norms. Okay, like how many registers we are going to put and for what purpose we are going to use those particular registers. So that's why I am saying that this is one of the major design decision. So when we are going to design a processor according to the requirement, we know we are going to identify what is the power of this particular processor, what it can perform. Depending on that, now we have to decide how many registers we are going to put and for what purpose we are going to use those particular registers. And basically it says that this is the top level of memory hierarchy. So if we are having, now look into that storage element that we are having in the processor computer system, then it will come into the top level of memory hierarchy. Why we are saying that it works on von Neumann stored program principle. So this is the CPU and it is connected to the main memory. Okay, so through system bus it is connected. So main memory is also a storage element, storage device where you can store our information. So inside this particular processor we are having some registers. So here also we can store some information. So we said these registers are basically in the top level of memory hierarchy. Then in next level in this diagram you can say that main memory is coming in the picture. But we may have some other memory element between my processor and main memory also. We will discuss that thing later on. And beyond main memory also we may have some storage devices, because the main memory is again having a limited space, but if we want to store more information, then what will happen? All of you know that we are using hard disks in our computer to store information. So that in next level that hard disk may come in this memory hierarchy. So that is why it is said that it is in the top level of memory hierarchy. So when we are going to discuss about the memory, then again we will come back to this particular part, memory hierarchy. Now when we are going to talk about the registers, then we are having some register which is user visible registers. Okay, so why we say user visible registers? Basically, these are the registers visible to the users, and as a programmer, we can use these particular registers. And generally, we talk about the user visible registers. But there are some registers we have inside the processor which is not visible to the user. Okay, we need those particular registers to perform the operation in a proper way. But user or programmer cannot use those particular registers. Just you remember that in last class we have shown some internal diagram of a processor when we explain about the program execution. Now, if you remember it, you just see that how we are connecting the ALU. Say this is one input, it is directly coming from the accumulator, which is your user visible. Programmer can use this particular this thing. That second input is directly coming from the internal bus bar. So here I am having one input and here I am having another input, and through control signal I am going to perform some operation, and the result we are going to put in one temporary register Z. Okay. So we are putting these things in this Z register, and later on we are transferring this particular information from Z register to this particular data bus, and through data bus it is going to appropriate destination. Now in this particular case, you are using a Z register which is not visible to the programmer. As a programmer, I don't know that there is a register called Z exists in the processor, but the designers needs it, so they put it inside the processor. Because you just see, whenever output it is generating the result, straight away you cannot give into the this particular internal bus, because we are having some input in this particular bus. So if we disturb this particular information in the bus, then my result is going to get disturbed. So that's why you are storing it some temporary space. You getting it? No. Why this Z is required? If we don't put Z, and if we directly connect this particular output of ALU to the internal bus of my processor, then we will have a data conflict. Already one input is there, ALU is working on this particular input, but suddenly we are disturbing this information, and whatever is coming out for the ALU, we are again putting into the same position. So since it is going to have some problem, so that's why we are storing it in this temporary register. So this Z is not user visible. It is not visible to the programmer, and programmer cannot use it. Now, what are the different user visible registers that we have? This is your general purpose register. Then we are having data register, address register, and condition code. Now, when we talk about general purpose register, basically it says that we can store data as well as address on this particular general purpose register, or maybe some other information also, relevant information that we can store. But if I say that it is a data register, in that particular case we can only store data. Whatever we have stored in this particular register, it will be always treated as a data. Some registers will be treated as an address register. So whatever information we are going to put in the address register, that will be always treated as an address. And we are having some condition codes. We will discuss these condition codes in this particular lecture itself. Now say, when we have seen one internal structure and we know that we are having some registers, so already we have talked about MAR, memory address register, and MBR, memory data registers. Now just see the use of those two registers. Already we have discussed and explained. In MAR we are going to give the address of a memory location from which we are going to access data, or we may store data. So in this particular case, when I talk about this register MAR, it is always an address register. So whatever we store over there, it will be always treated as an address. Similarly, in case of MBR, you just see that when we fetch some information from memory, then first we are going to bring it to the MBR, and from that we are going to put it in the appropriate register. So in this particular case, MBR may be treated as a data register, but for some instruction, again we have to fetch some data which will be treated as a address also. So that issue will come in picture. But in general, now we can say that MAR can be treated false in the address register and MNPR will be false in the data register. Okay. So this is the way we can always see. So these are the different kind of registers that we have inside a processor. Now, how many general purpose register we may have? So generally you can say that in between 8 to 32 general purpose registers we are going to put. But again it is a design decision, you have to say. If we are having fewer register, if you put fewer register, that what will happen? There will be more memory references. What does it mean? You can think something like that. This is the processor and we are having this particular main memory and it is connected to this particular system. So if I am having very few registers over here, then what will happen? We can store very few information. So we bring some information from memory and kept it over there. But after sometimes you'll find that we need a new information from the memory. Then what will happen? I have to free one of the register, that means we have to store this information in main memory and we have to bring it to this particular register that required information from memory to the register. So if you are having a pure storage space, pure memory, then we may have more number of such type of memory references. More number of data movements will be there when we are going to work with the computer. But more does not reduce memory references and take up processor speed. So if I am going to put more registers, then what will happen? We are going to have consuming more processor space. So basically this space is nothing but a space in the silicon wafer. Because if we are going to put more number of registers, then we will take more number of silicon space. But it observed that more number of register doesn't reduce the memory references. It will reduce, but it is not going to reduce considerably. Alright, it may happen that we are going to work with limited numbers of memory space only. So this is again, if we are going to keep more number of registers, it may happen that it may not increase the efficiency of my processor. So you have to decide appropriately that how many registers we are going to have. Again, you just see that if I am going to have registers, we have to identify that particular register when I am going to work with that particular register. So if I am having say register from R0 to say Rn-1. To identify those particular register, we will be needing some sort of addressing scheme, and this is basically we need some of address bit. So similar like that, if I am going to have 8 registers, to identify any one of these register, I need 3 bits of information. If I am going to put 16 registers, we need 4 bits of information. For 32 register, we need 5 bits of information to identify one of the registers. So you just see, if we are going to increase the number of registers in a processor, then we need more number of control signals to identify the processor. So these are the issues. So in a holistic way, we have to look for all those issues and come up with a reasonable numbers that how many registers you are going to put in a processor. Now what will be the size of those registers? It is large enough to hold a full address if it is address register, or it is large enough to hold a full word if we are going to work with data. That means when I am going to talk about the 32-bit processor, that means we are going to work with 32-bit data in one go. That means in ALU I am going to give 2 inputs, both are of size 32 bits. That means if it is coming from the registers, then what will happen? Size of register has to be 32 bit. So that's why it says that it should be large enough to hold full word. But often it finds that the possibility to combine 2 registers together to make it a bigger data. So like that in case of your C programming already, if you are accustomed to it, I think you know what is the integer, then double integer and long integer. Okay. So there we are just increasing the size of the integer, that number of bits that we are having. So in this particular case, what will happen? To store this or represent this particular integer, we may combine 2 registers together and we say that this 2 register is going to keep the information for this particular integer A. So like that we can combine 2 or more registers to store a bigger value. And now accordingly we have to interpret it, and accordingly we have to design our processor or instruction in such a way that it is going to perform the operation correctly and we are going to get the correct result. Okay, so this is registers, and we said these are the general purpose register. Okay. Second one is called some more register that we are having, control and status register. Out of that control and status register, this is a class of register, and generally said these are the special purpose registers. And I think already we have mentioned about those particular registers. We said this is your program counter, instruction decoding register, or say IR, and memory address register MAR, and memory buffer register MBR. And we have seen that we are going to use those particular registers for specific purposes only. Okay, so that's why I am not saying that these are general purpose register, but these are special purpose register. So program counter, what is the use of program counter? It keeps the address of memory location from where we are going to fetch the next instruction, and we are going to execute an instruction. Then program counter is going to keep track of the execution, and it will keep the address of the memory location from where we have to fetch our next instruction. An instruction decoding register or instruction register, it is used to store the instruction after fetching it from the memory, and that input will go to the control unit, and accordingly control unit is going to interpret it and it is going to generate the appropriate signal, control signal. So memory address register, I am saying that it is an interfacing register between processor and memory. It keeps the address of the memory location from where we are going to bring the information or we are going to store our result. And memory buffer register, second is an interfacing register where we are going to keep the data in this particular register first. So if it is a read operation, then first it will come to the memory buffer register. From memory buffer register, we are going to transfer it to the appropriate destination. Similarly, if we are going to write something to the memory, then what will happen? First of all, we have to bring the information from source register to this memory buffer register. Then control unit will give the write signal, then this contents will be returned to this particular memory location whose address is given by the memory address register. So these four are the special purpose register. Now we are having the condition code registers. Okay, these are the set of individual bits. Okay, result of last operation was 0. So I will explain this thing. What does it mean? So depending on these things, we are going to say that this is a set of individual bits. Okay, condition codes, it is nothing but we are having some individual bits and combining together. We say this is the conditional code registers. Now, it can be read implicitly by a programs. Okay, we'll see when we are going to read it. Like for example, this is jump if 0. But we'll see what exactly it means. Cannot usually be said by the programs. Okay, so generally those particular bits cannot usually be said by the program. So when you are going to write a program, you are not going to set it through your program, but it depends on the computer operation. I'll explain these things. And this needs for conditional instruction. We are having some instruction which fall in this particular category, conditional category instruction. So those flags bits will be used to design those particular conditional instruction. Now you just see what are the things that we are talking about. Jump if 0, result of last operation is 0, all those things. No. So depending on those things, we are going to have those particular condition code registers. Now, here I am just going to see now that it says that sets of individual bits, and for example, it is coming from the previous slide, result of last operation was 0. Now consider an example. I think this is a segment of a C code. You are saying that for I equal to 0, I is greater than 0, I minus minus, AI is equal to AI plus 10. Then we are having this particular next instruction. Now you just see here we are comparing it whether I is greater than or 0. Then we are going to execute this particular instruction again and again, and it will go from going to execute it 10 times. Now how we are going to identify that we are going to execute this particular operation or this instruction again and again, and when we are going to terminate this particular operation and we will go back to this particular next instruction. So it depends on some condition. Now what is the condition we are talking here? I am saying that if I is greater than 0. So this is the condition. Now how we are going to check that whether I is greater than 0 or not? So to check these things we are going to use those particular flag bits, and here I can say that we may have a flag bit maybe called as 0 when my result is 0. Then this flag bit will set to 1, otherwise it will be 0. So in this scenario, you just see that I am having this particular I is greater than 0 and I minus minus. What does I minus minus? This is basically I equal to I minus 1. Okay, this is the scenario that I am in. Now you just see that here I am performing an operation, arithmetic operation I minus 1. Now depending on the result of this particular ALU operation, those flag bits will be either set or reset. If I say that flag bit is set, means the value of the flag bit will be 1, or if it is reset, means the value of this particular flag bit will be 0. Now I am talking about set and reset. So from this only you will be knowing that to store those particular flag bits we need flip-flops, and if you combine some flip-flops together we say this is a resistor. So in case of 8-bit resistors, then what will happen? I am having 8 flip-flops. Now when we talk about a condition code resistor, say this is a condition code resistor, and say I am having some bits, then these bits can be set or reset independently. Okay, so this is the individual bit. So when we are going to set those particular bits, it depends on my ALU operation. So we are going to perform an ALU operation. Depending on the result of the ALU operation, some of the bits will be set or some of the flag bits will be reset to 0. So this is the way we are going to do. So that's why in the first slide we said that cannot be usually set by the program. So cannot be usually set by the program. So in most of the cases it will not be set by a programs, but we may have some flag bits which will be set by a program itself. Okay, maybe programmer can set those things, but in general it will not set by the programs, or it will not set by a programmer. Then we are going to set it basically ALU operation. After performing an ALU operation, depending on the result, we are going to set those particular flag bits. Okay. What are the flag bits? Generally it says that we are having set of individual bits, and we say these are flag bits. In CAN, or these are basically condition codes. What are those particular condition code? It says that sign of the last result. This is one sign bit. We can say if the result of the last operation is 0, we can say this is the 0 bit. After performing the operation, if it generates a carry out, then we say that carry is set. So basically all those things depends on my this is output and say these are input. So A and B and say this is the C. Now when we perform the operation, if the result is your negative, then this sign bit will be set. So because 0 indicates positive, 1 indicates negative result. After performing the operation, if result is 0, then that 0 bit is going to set. Now in this previous example you just see, I am going to say if I is greater than 0, I minus minus, then do this job. And in I minus minus, I am doing I equal to I minus 1. When this result equal to 0, so when I am reducing it, and when this value of I becomes 0, then what will happen? It is going to set this particular 0 bit. Okay. Now while I am going to design this instruction, I will design the instruction. I am going to check this particular 0 bit. If it is set, then what will happen? I know that value of this particular I is 0, then will come out and we are going to execute the next instruction. If result is not 0, then value of this 0 flag is 0, that means it is reset. Then in that particular case, we will go back to execute this particular instruction again. So this is the way we are going to design our conditional instruction, and it will help us to change the sequence of our program execution. Okay. Now similarly, equal flags may be there. If both the inputs are equal, then it is going to set this particular equal flags. Then we are having overflow. I think I have discussed about the overflow when we discussed in addition operation, because what will happen if we add two numbers, it may happen that it may go beyond the range. In this particular case, we said that overflow occurs. Now like that, we are having interrupt enables disabled and supervisor mode. Okay. Now in this particular case, these are the conditional flag bits, and this depends on your ALU operation, like that sign, 0, carry, equal, overflow, like that. Or you may have some more also, but these carry flags or these flags depends on our ALU operations. So we perform an operation in ALU, and depending on the result of the ALU, we are going to set this individual bit. So this is a sign bit, 0 bit or 0 flag, carry flag, equal flag, and this is the overflow flag. So here I can say that these are the flags which are set or reset by the result of ALU operation. Programmer cannot set this thing. Now similarly, two more flags which I am talking about here. One is your interrupt enable disable bit, and second one supervisor mode. Okay. So these are the bits that programmer can set. Okay. Now say here I am talking about interrupt. I think I just mentioned about the interrupt. Say what will happen if we don't have some information. Say if some other device is going to use the processor, then it will give an interrupt signal. Depending on the interrupt signal, now we are going to give the service to this particular devices or particular component. Now say when you are writing a program, say if you feel that while you are executing your program, it should not be disturbed by any other program. That means you are not going to allow interrupt. So in this particular case, we can indicate it in over here. So you say that we are going to disable the interrupt. So in this particular flag, say you can say that if this is equal to 0, then it is disabled, and when it is 1, then it is enabled. So now programmer can set it. Similarly, here processor can work in two different mode, user mode and supervisor mode. Those who are accustomed with Unix system or Linux system, you may be knowing. So in this particular case, we are having this particular supervisor mode. And X, here I am saying that this is basically till now we have not used it. So this is unused bit. Okay. So it is an 8-bit register, but each bit can be accessed individually depending on our requirement. And out of these 8 bits, we are using 5 bits as flags, which depends on the result of ALU, 2 other flags which can be set or reset by the programmer, and 1 particular bit we are not using in our computer. So we are using an 8-bit registers. Out of that, 7 bits are used for our flags, and we have not used 1 particular bit. Now, just say in this particular way, we are going to keep the information, and we are going to use those particular information while going to design some instruction. Now I can give you some things. Now what overflow is going to happen? Now you just see that already I said that if I am going to work with an 8-bit processor, then I know that if I am going to use in 2's complement form, then I can go from -128 to plus 127. Now in this particular case, you just see that if I am going to add say 65 and say 75, so these two falls well inside this range. Now if I add it, then 11, 10, and it becomes 140. So my result is 140. But if you see that 140 can be again represented with the help of 8-bit information, so we are going to get some result, but this result is not the desired result, because it is when I am going to convert it to the binary equivalent, you will find that it is going to represent some negative numbers. Okay, since it is going to, we are not getting the correct result, it is beyond the range. In that particular case, this overflow bit will be set to 1. And by looking into the overflow bit, now we can say whether we are getting the result should be accepted or not accepted. Because whatever processor is going to give me, if I am going to accept it, then in next calculation I am going to get a wrong result, because here 140, though my expected result is 140, but due to my representation of my numbers, what will happen? We are going to get a wrong result. So to indicate it, we are having this particular overflow. Now how to set this particular bit? Okay, so in a very simple way, I can say that if I am going to have this particular 0 flag, 0. When we are going to set it, say my ALU is going to give me the result, this is 8 bit. So if all 8 bits are 0, then my result is 0. So now how I am going to indicate it? So if all are 0, then it should set to 1. So if I am going to use an OR gate over here, then what will happen? If anyone is 1, then it is output is 1. So if I take negation of it, then what will happen? If all are 0, then only I am going to get 1. Otherwise, it is 0. So that means this particular circuit can be used to set or reset this particular Z flag. Similarly, I am having sign flag. Then what will happen? From this result, I am going to look for the most significant bit, which basically indicate my sign of the number. So with the help of these things, I can put this particular sign bit. Then I can have this particular carry bit. So we are having a carry out. So that signal can be directly used over here. Now similarly, you try to find out what circuit you will be needing to set this particular overflow bit. This is one. And now when you are going to use those particular bits, generally what will happen? You write programs like that. No, if A is greater than B, then say do something, then perform this particular code segment, else perform this particular code segment. So this is a code. Now to do these things, A is greater than B. So in this particular case, we may have a comparator. Okay, that comparator is going to set some of the flag bits, that equal bits or greater than bits. If we have at all, then we can use these things. But generally, if we don't have this greater than, less than flag bits, then what will happen? To get the effect of A is greater than B, generally I can perform the operation A minus B in ALU. Okay. Now depending on the result, any of the bits will set or reset, and we can use this particular bit to check and implement such type of effect. Now because we don't have any instruction called if in my processor, now we are going to see what are the conditional instruction that we are going to design, so that with the help of those conditional instruction we can implement such type of high level programming construct. Okay, so while we are going to discuss it, and when we discuss about the instruction set, then we will see how we are going to get the provision, so that I can write a C code in this particular fashion with this if statement, and finally it will be converted to a machine code, or that it will be mapped to the instruction of that particular machine where I am going to execute this particular program. And these are the issues that we are going to see when we are going to look into the designing of the instruction set and how to implement those particular instructions. Okay, with that I'll stop here today. Maybe in the next class we are going to see more about that processor design, or maybe slightly shift that away. Okay. With this I am concluding it. Thank you very much.